Welcome to Conversations with Pastor Charlie, a series of candid, insightful discussions offering a godly perspective on current events, interviews with people from all walks of life, and other topics the Lord places on Pastor Charlie's heart. Now here's Pastor Charlie.
The United States of America is getting ready to celebrate our 250th anniversary. And in order for this country to remain great, the church has a lot of work to do. So tonight, I want to start a series called Preparing for the Work. I will be referring to Nehemiah chapter 2 throughout this series. So it would be a good idea for you to read it, especially verses 11 through 20. Now, there are times in history when a person or a group of people achieve accomplishments that are so extraordinary that it is almost impossible to erase their actions from our memories. These instances are etched permanently upon our minds. For example, Christopher Columbus and his willingness to go beyond the map to discover new lands. How about George Washington and his contribution to American history? Abraham Lincoln and his steadfast determination to emancipate the slaves in America. How about the Wright brothers and their contribution to aviation? Well, Alexander Graham Bell and his role in developing the telephone. Thomas Edison and his invention of the light bulb. Henry Ford and his gift of the horseless carriage, aka the automobile. How about Martin Luther King and his sacrifices for civil rights? Well, Mother Teresa and her benevolent, generous contribution to the plight of underprivileged human beings. Well, let's not forget Al Gore's claim of inventing the internet. Now, that's a joke if you didn't get it. He didn't invent it, but he claimed it. You know, these people have, in the truest sense of the word, left their footprint on the sands of time. An unknown writer has said, footprints on the sand of time are never made by sitting down. While their contributions may not have been as publicly recognized as the ones I have mentioned, there have been many people who have served the Lord and left a permanent mark upon hundreds, if not thousands, of lives in the world. For example, pastors, board members, staff members, Sunday school teachers, praise team members, ushers, greeters, people who pick up others for church. While some people are not necessarily in the public view, their contributions are nonetheless important and not any less impacting. In my opinion, Nehemiah is one of the greatest standout characters in the Bible, whose footprints have been left deep and distinct on the path of the past. In fact, his footprints have inspired with fresh courage many hearts who are suffering from illness and fatigue in the service of the Lord. So let me start with a very well-known parable of Jesus that's found in Matthew 25, verses 14 through 31. He said, again, the kingdom of heaven can be illustrated by the story of a man going on a long trip. He called together his servants and entrusted his money to them while he was gone. He gave 5 bags of silver to one, 2 bags of silver to another, and 1 bag of silver to the last, dividing it in proportion to their abilities. Then he left on his trip. Now, we see in this parable that people have different abilities. Not everybody's not the same. But the greater ability, the greater the expectation. And we see the different abilities in the following verses. So let's continue in verse 16. It says, the servant who received the 5 bags of silver began to invest the money and earned 5 more. The servant with 2 bags of silver also went to work and earned 2 more. But the servant who received the 1 bag of silver dug a hole in the ground and hid the master's money. After a long time, their master returned from his trip and called them to give an account of how they had used his money. Now let's look at how they use their abilities, starting in verse 20. The servant to whom he had entrusted the 5 bags of silver came forward with 5 more and said, Master, you gave me 5 bags of silver to invest. I have earned 5 more. The master was full of praise. Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount. So now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together. Well, the servant who had received 2 bags of silver came forward and said, Master, you gave me 2 bags of silver to invest. I have earned 2 more. The master said, well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together. Now, the first thing that I really want to stress is the master knew their abilities. The next thing is that these 2 used their abilities extremely well. The one with 5 bags earned an extra 5 bags, and the one with 2 bags earned an extra 2 bags. Now, please don't miss the master's response to them, though. He didn't praise one more. He didn't praise one more than the other. He didn't praise the one with more ability than the other one that had lesser ability. He said the exact same thing. Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount. Now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together. The exact same thing he said. Now this teaches us, if we are faithful in using the ability God has given us, we will also hear, well done. But let's look at that one final servant. Verse 24, starting in verse 24. Then the servant with the 1 bag of silver came and said, Master, I knew you were a harsh man, harvesting crops you didn't plant and gathering crops you didn't cultivate. I was afraid I would lose your money, so I hid it in the earth. Look, here is your money back. But the master replied, you wicked and lazy servant. If you knew I harvested crops I didn't plant and gathered crops I didn't cultivate, why didn't you deposit my money in the bank? At least I would have gotten some interest on it. Guys, this servant didn't have the ability of the first or second servant, but he did have ability, and the master expected him to use what ability he had. If he would have done something with his ability, the master would have said the same thing he said to the other 2. But according to the master, not using your ability makes you wicked, lazy, and useless. So now, let's look at the fate of this servant. starting in verse 28. Then he ordered, "Take the money from this servant and give it to the one with the 10 bags of silver. To those who use well what they are given, even more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from them who do nothing, even what little they have will be taken away. Now throw this useless servant into outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." This is a hard one. We have to make sure we are not so discouraged that we give up. We also can't be tainted by the me syndrome. The disease of me brings about the defeat of us. Now, 1 talent is equal to about $35,000 today. Sometimes we despise what the Lord has given us. Our 1 talent is worthless to us, so we bury it. God has us right where He wants us. I need to quit looking in and start looking out. The defeat of me brings about the destiny of us. God gives to us according to our ability. When we are faithful with that, it is increased. Nehemiah used his ability well. Nehemiah's journey from Babylon to Jerusalem occupied 3 months. Think of this, a 3-month survey of the costly journey ahead. Contrary to public opinion, not everything happens overnight. An English proverb aptly said, "Rome was not built in a day." The journey to be where we are today is a path which has taken time. The path of the past is strewn with success and failure, hard work and tremendous effort, giving and planting, sacrifice and wise investment of effort and resources. But most importantly, careful attention to the will of God. Because of the sacrifices and investments of the past, the church is standing at the beginning of a challenging but rewarding future of expansion and growth for the kingdom's sake. These are truly exciting times, and we should embrace this moment with sober reality and excited confidence. Now, over the next few weeks, I would like to use the Old Testament stand-out character Nehemiah to give us and help us understand how to forge our way successfully into the future. Nehemiah was a man of prayer who placed the following things on his prayer list. Number 1, for God to forgive his and Israel's sin. We need to be praying and asking God to forgive our sins and the United States' sin. For God to prepare the heart of the king of Babylon to allow him to go to Jerusalem to rebuild the walls of the city. He also prayed for the assurance of the king for safe passage to Jerusalem. He also prayed for provisions of timber from the forest and stones from the quarries, that the city might be rebuilt. All of Nehemiah's requests were answered by the Lord, and Nehemiah is now on the long-coveted field of labor. Once on his field of labor, Nehemiah faces many more challenges and takes the following actions. Listen to the actions he took. He took time for reflection. He surveyed the difficulties. He appealed for workers. He faces down the opposition, and he achieves his dreams. Now, over the next few weeks, we will go over each of these actions that Nehemiah took and see how they apply to the church today. And if we, the church, will follow Nehemiah's example, we will be able and enable the United States of America to remain great as we get ready to celebrate our 250th anniversary. Now, next week, we're going to go over Nehemiah took time for reflection. We do need to take time for reflection. So please join me in this journey with Nehemiah over the next few weeks. Good night.
Jesus is coming soon. Are you ready to meet him face to face? Are your family and friends ready to meet him face to face? Please be ready. Then help others get ready. God bless.